What is going on, gunfighters? I think oftentimes we wax nostalgic on the good old days. Remember when rifles came with iron sights. Remember when the Winchester Model 70 was made in America. Remember when Remington turned out a decent rifle and shotgun. But that's not always the case. So let's be optimistic today. Sometimes firearms models get better with time. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns and gun-related stuff the right way with God Almighty at the center, biblical Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. I am blessed to serve you as host. Bio bullet points in the show notes. Let's get into it. How about the Ruger Mini 14? Ruger Mini 14 has been around for decades at this point. The early ones, although they look cool in the A-Team, not the best reputation for accuracy. In fact, they acquired a reputation for the opposite of that, the opposite of accuracy. I would say that the Ruger Mini 14s being made today are better than the originals. Now, you might want an original one because you're trying to, do people cosplay the A-Team? I don't know. You might want it for like historical reasons, but if you want the best shooting Mini 14, I think that you're better served today with a brand new Mini 14 than you are from days of old. The Mini 14 with modern manufacturing practices, you can get them now in stainless steel. There are some really good models of the Mini 14, and again, I think they're better than ever. So it's not always the case. Now, I'm going to consider this kind of one model because it's a continuation, but the Browning A-Bolt was a good rifle. Browning A-Bolt is still a good rifle if you can find a good used one. But I think the Browning X-Bolt is a better rifle. The Browning X-Bolt has some advantages. I really like their mounting pattern for optics. I think it's one of the best for a bolt-action centerfire rifle on the market. I say one of the best. The best would be just to put a pick rail. Who doesn't use a pick rail? Just put a pick rail milled into the receiver. That, to me, would be the best. Simpler, less moving parts. But other than that, the Browning X-Bolt probably has the best mounting system out there. They are crazy accurate. The Browning A-Bolts were accurate. The X-Bolts, I think, are as or more accurate than they are. You got some really good options as far as stainless steel, as far as traditional looks. If you want the, the blued steel and walnut kind of look, they still have that. But if you want the Cerakote, they have those as well. So I think the X-Bolt, if you consider it a continuation of the A-Bolt, and you could argue and say it's not, but I think that the X-Bolt is better, is a better gun from a shooter standpoint. Again, you might want an old A-Bolt for nostalgia, but from a shooting standpoint, I would say the X-Bolt is a better shooting gun. And individual sample size may vary. You can get a very accurate A-Bolt, and I haven't heard of an inaccurate X-Bolt, but I guess it could happen. But by and large, I'd say the X-Bolt is better. I'm going to say something controversial. The 1022. The original ones were great. I still have one that I bought. I don't remember how old I was. 14, 15, 16. I don't know. I had my mom go down to Walmart and buy it for me when I was young. I still have it. I still train with it quite a bit. It's a great gun. They go back quite a ways, the 1022. But the older ones, in my opinion, have a worse trigger than the newer ones. Now, there was a time when they went from a metal receiver to a polymer receiver. Now they're back to a metal receiver, I think, on most models. You might argue that they got worse with the plastic receiver, although I don't know. If you want like weather resistance, there's nothing wrong with a plastic receiver. But the newer ones, metal receiver, and I think the triggers now, even in the factory guns, are better than the old triggers, in my experience. I don't think the accuracy has gotten worse. And I actually like the rails they come with now, because the rails they come with now have two different mounting options. It used to be the old one just had the really old, like 22 style, where you could put the rail on it, but it only came with the, the 3/8 inch or 11 millimeter dovetail, whereas now it comes with a much beefier kind of standard pick rail to mount on. So I think, again, Ruger 1022, even if you take a basic model, and there are way more models available today than there were a while ago, but even if you take a basic model, I think you're better off. Again, unless you just want the original, you're better off with a new Ruger 1022. All right, guys, don't have a heart attack. I'm going to talk good about Glock. You know, I pick on Glocks a lot. The ugly duckling of the gun world. The 2x4 ergonomics of the handguns. But I'm going to be nice. I think Glocks have gotten better. I think they've gotten better over time. I think the Gen 5s are better than any of the previous generations. I think that they have a better trigger, which is not saying a whole lot, but it is better than the Gen 4s. They got rid of the finger grooves, which were stupid. I mean, the 90s gave us many horrible things. One of those was finger grooves on handguns. If you ever see a handgun with finger grooves, just run away. But they got rid of those, thankfully, because they're dumb. And Glock got rid of those. They kept a good texture. I really like the RTF Rough Texture one. That was a very short run. But the RTF2, I think, is a grip they still use, the grip texture they still use. That's way better than the old Gen 3s. That's way better. Those things, the old Gen 3s, they're like smooth and finger grooves. They're just wrong in all the wrong places. So, yeah, I think the Gen 5s are better than the older generation. So, if you are going to get a Glock, I think the Gen 5s are better. Now, since the patents expired on the Gen 3, there's a lot more aftermarket stuff for the Gen 3. And if you just want to, trick out your Glock and just order a bunch of stuff on Amazon or eBay or wherever you get your Glock parts, Glock store, you just want to just switch parts out and change them around, the Gen 3 is better for that, but that's just because the patent's expired, not because it's better. I think better out of the box, the Gen 5 Glock is better. And now you can get many models. For a long time, if you wanted, it was like the old Ford Model A or Model T? You can have it in any color you want as long as it's black. Well, Glock wisely, starting with the peanut butter Glock, the Glock 19X, they started coming out with Glocks in different colors, which is great because black's a horrible color. Black guns don't matter. And you can get Glocks in other colors, which I think is fantastic. So again, I think the Gen 5 Glock is better than the previous generations of Glocks. The Ruger Blackhawks, I think that the newer ones are better than the older ones. I think the newer ones can handle hot pressure. And one of the reasons people like Rugers in revolvers is they can handle the higher, hotter loads. If you're going to, let's say, really hot load a 45 Colt just to ridiculous levels above 44 Magnum. I do believe the original Blackhawk, I believe the Super Blackhawk, I think is beefier and can handle higher pressures. So I think that, and again, this is not my area of expertise, so I don't have a lot of first-hand experience with single-action revolvers, but I do believe that the Super Blackhawk is better than the original Blackhawk from like the 1950s. So there is another example. Let me talk briefly, because I'm going to throw it in here, about ammo. I was recently blown away. It used to be that Remington Golden bullets were like the garbage bullets. Like, just atrociously bad. Like, even if you got them for free, you might not want to shoot them. They were so bad. But recently, and I say recently, it's been a while ago now, but there was a bucket of bullets deal. A bucket of bullets at Walmart. It was like 1,400 bullets, maybe more, for under $100. And I thought, you know what? It's so cheap. I just want some, for quick draw practice, for plinking. I'm just going to get them. And maybe I'll regret it, but I'm going to get them. Well, I shot the whole bucket, minus, some that, maybe I handed out to somebody else to shoot or they fell on the ground. But they shot great. Great for bulk ammo. They're not going to win the Olympics, right? They're not what I would recommend for self-defense if you were going to carry 22 for self-defense, which I don't recommend anyway. They're not a CCI mini mag, But for the price, I think the Golden Bullet is way better than it was when I was a kid. I think the Remington, although if you don't know, Remington arms got kind of bifurcated. Remington, the firearms manufacturer, got split off from Remington ammunition. I think Remington ammunition is as good or better than it's ever been. And the Golden Bullet is a phenomenal illustration of how much, Remington ammo has improved and how good it is. Even their bottom of the barrel 22 ammo in bulk is pretty good. So the Remington Golden Bullet is really good. And let me just close off on a bright note. There are so many rifles today coming out with a sub-MOA guarantee. Now, you could argue whether that's germane to you or not, whether that really matters or not. But the fact that so many manufacturers are confident enough to stick a MOA guarantee on their rifle, it wasn't that long ago, a decade, 2 decades ago, you had to either just get a really, really good rifle out of the box that was way better than average, or you had to spend a ton of money on a custom rifle or do custom hand loads, measure your chamber, all this other kinds of stuff to get a sub-MOA gun. Now you can go to Walmart and get a sub-MOA gun. You could expect to go to a gun store and have your pick of several different models of even budget-minded guns that are sub-MOA. That was not the case decades ago. So as much as we might wax nostalgic for some stuff, and in some cases it has gotten worse, but in many cases it's gotten better. So today on this episode, let's be a glass half full kind of episode. Anyway, with that, that's going to bring us to the tactical verse of the day. This is going to come from Ecclesiastes. The whole Bible is full of wisdom, but if you want some real, life wisdom, Ecclesiastes is a good book, one of the very many good places in the Bible to look. Do not say, why were the former days better than these? For you do not inquire wisely concerning this. From Ecclesiastes, chapter 7. Thanks for listening, guys, and have a blessed day.